everybody. Welcome to the third lecture of the Architecture series. Tonight we have the pleasure to present Mark Dorrian, Dr. Ella Chmieleswka, Christopher French, and Matthew Ozga-Lawn, with their views to Warsaw and the projects in the post-socialist city. Please give them a warm applause.
Thank you very much for coming. It's really amazing to see so many people here, and yeah, I hope it will be of some interest. I mean, my part in this really is not huge. I mean, I'm going to give you a general introduction to a project that we did, a 2-year MARC project based around the city of Warsaw in Poland. The setup is going to be, I'm going to say some things first of all, just to kind of introduce the project, introduce some themes, and then Matt Ozga-Lawn and Chris French are going to talk in a little bit more detail about their projects. And then Ella, who is a really crucial member of the team, will, I suppose, make some reflections about the project, but also about the reflections, I guess, on the value of this kind of project, where effectively people who are strangers to a city spend a period of time looking at it and developing ideas and propositions for it. Now, I've talked about this work in several different venues before. But I've never started this way, so this is kind of interesting experience, possibility for me, because in the same way that if you're working on a studio project, every time you present or show the work, I think everybody has experience where they find out something different about it. Not necessarily because of what people say about it, but because you have to talk about it again. And every time you describe the project, it changes a little bit. You talk about it differently, and that itself opens up, if you're working on a design project, new possibilities, new ideas for how it could develop. And it's like that for me as well when I look back and reflect on the work in different venues, and different people. I'm always sort of thinking, well, every time I talk about it, I feel that I see something a little bit different about it, and try to set it up in a slightly different way. So the very first image that I want to show is an image which will be familiar, I think, to many people. This is primarily because of Walter Benjamin's reflections on this painting. This is Paul Clay's Angelus Novus, and this is the image that Benjamin reflects upon when he talks about he uses this image to picture some kind of history, and Benjamin says, looking at this image, this is how we picture. He suggests the angel of history, or how it could be pictured. And Benjamin says that he suggests this is like a kind of captive angel in a way. He says that a kind of a storm is blowing in paradise. History is a kind of catastrophe that develops from this kind of originary point, and this storm has pinioned the angel's wings. The angel is kind of pushed backwards by this catastrophic force of developing history. The angel wants to kind of stop time, to awaken the dead, to bring this wreckage in front of it back to life again in some way, but it can't. The angel itself is caught in this maelstrom. Now, although Benjamin doesn't sort of thematize this, I suppose one of the interesting things about that is that when we stand and look at this, we're kind of standing in the direction that kind of history is blowing from, looking at this frightened image, this frightened face, this frightened figure, which mirrors our own position in a way, but we're kind of looking back at this creature, which is it's going away. It's going away from us at the same time we're looking at it. Now, I think when we, as a year tutor, when we begin a year organizer, whenever we think about cities that we might work on and the cities that we might base a project around, one's always sort of looking for clues in a way, and often one finds a kind of an image or a text which seems to unlock a kind of possibility, which we can just anticipate opportunities for the way that the project might develop. I know for those of you who are working on Marseille, for example, with Suzanne, the image of the transporter bridge, this kind of incredible figure of the Armada transporter bridge was an incredibly important image, and Dorrian will have found similar things in Florence. For me, this was the kind of key image at the start. Also, I find this just sort of generally searching about the city, around information about the city as one does, and I found out this is a photograph from a photograph album put together by UNESCO. And this shows a kind of Polish child who was evacuated from Warsaw at the end of the war. And apparently what we're seeing here is that the child was asked to draw the place of her house in the city. And we get this incredible sort of flurry of material, of stuff. The kind of chalk was almost frantically worn down. And the child's expression as well was quite unreadable. There's kind of blankness, this sort of articulacy at the same time. So I want to begin with a kind of comparison between Benjamin's reflections on the angel of history and this child as kind of angel of history, if you like. Instead of the maelstrom blowing toward the child seems to be emerging from it. She's kind of drawing the catastrophe of history, and I think particularly the catastrophe of Polish history. Warsaw was a city that was almost completely destroyed during the Second World War, and has had, by all accounts, an incredibly traumatic 20th century history. And that's left behind a very complex material city. And the city is very difficult to read, I think, for people coming from a city like Edinburgh. Warsaw is very counterintuitive. We often, one sees Baroque palaces, for example, that were completed a year ago, whereas there are modernist buildings which have actually survived from the 1920s and 1930s. So one's kind of reading the city is very scrambled, and it's partly largely a result of this kind of traumatic history. It's also a bit of a mystery in a way what the child's actually drawing. I mean, is she drawing the city? Is she drawing the remains of the city? Is she drawing an explosion? Is she drawing the flight path of aircraft overhead? Or is she drawing the future in some way? Now, what we wanted to kind of thematize going to Warsaw was the idea, the whole year was set around the theme of the post-socialist city and its material prehistories. And this is I kind of see this as a sort of a picture, as it were, of the material prehistory of the city. And some of the expressiveness of this is actually the destruction of the stick of chalk itself. That the point is almost not to draw something, but to wear away the instrument of drawing. So this sort of sets some things in motion. Now, what do we mean by the post-socialist condition, or post-socialist situation? Well, I suppose in the first instance, what I was intending was that we mean a series of traits, a series of kind of characteristics that we were anticipating finding in the city, and that we knew from Ella that we would find there. Now, so something that's interesting about this picture is this is a slab block. The building behind the printed screen is actually a 12-story slab block. It hasn't got a big hole in the middle, but this is a very sort of characteristic image which sums up something about the streetscape and the physical environment of Warsaw today, and it's very characteristic of post-socialist cities. And this is the kind of draping of the city in this new commercial imagery. The city is effectively wrapped, or large parts of the city are effectively wrapped in commercial advertising. And with an image like this, what's happening is that, let's say, the rhetoric of this image is a kind of a shift from the grey skies of the socialist past to the blue skies of the sort of bright capitalist future, which the citizens are enjoined to pass through. So Warsaw sort of turned into the little piece of Paris in a way. This is La Défense. The ideological irony of this, of course, is that it's a blocked gateway. You can't actually pass through this. This is a screen which sits on top of a mouldering block behind. And what happens is that and again this is very characteristic of the post-socialist condition, that there's a kind of uncertainty about tenure, property rights, issues like this. So often one will, if you're a resident in the block, you may wake up the next day and find that your kind of windows have been completely covered by one of these screens, because the landlord or the owner of the building can make twice as much from it by having large-scale advertising, etc. So kind of social vulnerability, contest over conflict and contest over access to land, problems of privatisation, the hyper-capitalisation of certain capital investment in certain areas of the city, and quite radical and extreme poverty outside those. This is all very kind of characteristic of this situation, and a lot of the projects that we developed respond specifically to those conditions. The other thing I wanted to say was that Warsaw was a very interesting city to work on, because it gives us a challenge. It presents a challenge to us about how we understand context. Warsaw is what some people might describe as a kind of a low context city compared to a city like Edinburgh, for example, or certainly Florence, or Marseille, I think as well. Now that doesn't mean that there's any less context in Warsaw, but what it means is that the things that usually count as context, i.e. historic building, morphologies, traditional patterns, etc., the things that are normally kind of recognised as giving a contextual ground, are generally not there. The city is extremely gappy. There are very kind of wide, large swathes of unbuilt area, large terrains, and I think that gave a lot of the projects in the year a particular flavour. Warsaw seemed to be a city that could accommodate large-scale installations in a way that, and in fact it's a city that is historically marked by large-scale installations. So, I think that, again, that gives a certain kind of opening. I'm going to go very quickly here, just sort of to give you a visual registration of some of the stages that we went through. First of all, we did a project for going to Warsaw called Architectural Forensics, and this was based around the studio that we were going to be working in for the first year. Now, the idea of this was to turn the studio itself into a kind of space of site work. And in doing that, to anticipate certain possibilities or openings for activities that students might undertake whenever they went to the site, the actual city of Warsaw itself. And this was based around the idea that the studio might be treated as a kind of forensic site. Now, the idea of that was that it inherently directed our attention away from things that would normatively be considered to be architectural, the position of windows, for example, the disposition of the scale of the space, the disposition of doors, lighting, etc. Because the point is that if you're a forensic investigator operating on a crime site, the point is that everything potentially counts. You don't know in advance. And so working on a forensic site, you have to work very carefully. You have to kind of delicacy of action in the space. There has to be a kind of ethic of non-disturbance. And one's attention is drawn to things that one's attention would otherwise not be drawn to. A nice example of that, I think, is Sarah Price's project here, which used a very simple kind of graphic rubbing technique to